So, hello everyone. I am Béatrice Breton-Ascar. I'm a senior officer at the 4p1000 initiative, and I will be the moderator of today's webinar. I would like to welcome all participants, the partners, members, and friends of the 4p1000 initiative, the people from the Deloitte community, and all the other participants interested in MRV systems. MRV, as we know, standing for monitoring, reporting, and verification. So the purpose of the webinar that we are jointly organizing between Deloitte France and the 4p1000 initiative will focus on MRV systems related to soil health in the context of soil carbon storage and agroecology. The webinar will present the final results of a pro bono study conducted by Deloitte France on behalf of 4p1000. We will have a presentation during 45 minutes and then a Q&A at the end during 15 minutes. You will have a lot of time to raise your questions, and we'll try to answer the best way to satisfy you. A bit of the story behind this webinar is that it was first a discussion that started almost 1 year ago. Then a deep work conducted by the Deloitte team with different exchanges with the 4p1000 team. A conference mid of November 2023 in Montpellier, France, co-organized with the Farm Foundation. And I say hello to the people from Farm in the audience. And it was at the time to collect and understand and confront also the different points of view of different stakeholder groups, policymakers, scientists, farmers, private companies. And then we had the presentation of the study in Dubai during the 4p1000 Day. So I will now introduce you. I don't want to say more about the study and the tool that will emerge from this, but I would like to introduce you to the speakers. So we will have first Dr. Paul Lu, who is Executive Secretary of the 4p1000 Initiative. Then Ms. Marine Pocha, who is a Sustainable Director at Deloitte, France. Ms. Aliette Lefranc, who is a Sustainable Consultant at Deloitte too, who has done a huge work on the study. And Ms. Gabriela Ceballos, who is Agri-Climate Manager at Deloitte France. So the rules of the webinar will be the following. So as I said, you will have 15 minutes for Q&A at the end of the presentations. And you can write your questions in the chat. And you can also choose some questions if you have a great interest in one of them. And also for you to know, this webinar is registered and will be available in a few days on the 4p1000 YouTube channel. So I now let the floor to Dr. Paul Lu. Thank you.
Thank you, Beatrice. I will try in a few minutes just to recall some very important element on the 4p1000 initiative for those who are not familiar with our initiative. So the International 4p1000 Initiative, Soil for Food Security and Climate, was born in Paris in 2015 at COP21 of UNFCCC. And in fact, the name of the initiative came through a question that was asked to the participant that said, well, by which percentage should we increase the quantity of soil carbon stocks all around the world every year to theoretically compensate the global net emission of carbon by anthropogenic sources? And the answer to this question is 0.4%, which give in French 4 pour 1000 or 4 per 1000 in English, or as a kind of mixture that I use most of the time, 4 per 1000. So around the table in Paris in December 2015, there were about 160 signatories. That means country, international organization, farmers organization, NGOs, scientific institutions, and businesses that give birth to this initiative. And the goal of this initiative is to, of course, working under the umbrella of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, increase carbon sequestration in soil as organic matter through appropriate agricultural and forestry practices to increase food security, to adapt agriculture and forestry to climate change, and to mitigate climate change, contribute to the mitigation. All through a double-fold action plan in the field and as a scientific program. Of course, this 4 per meal target is an inspirational target, and it's not a numeral target that need to be addressed and implement everywhere on Earth. Next slide, please. So in fact, to give us the right direction and having a nice pathway, we at the 4 per meal initiative work on the elaboration and the validation of the proper governance of a strategic plan 2050. So this plan gives us clearly our vision for 2050, like a worldwide healthy and carbon-rich soil to combat climate change and end hunger, our mission, of course, and our ambition. And it also provided the guiding principle that we are an initiative based on science-based and result-based. So we would like to be strong on science on this initiative, and the main actors of this action are the farmers. So in the strategic plan, we organize all the objectives in 6 main goals that you have this in the picture, like the Olympic game symbol, and each of them bringing a category of action that we have to carry on about inception and conceptualization, implementation, promotion, collaboration, follow-up, and cross-cutting action. And inside each of the goals, we included 3 to 6 objectives. And among those 24 objectives altogether, 2 of them are talking about MRV and MRV2. And this is what was the starting point of the discussion with Deloitte and the discussion of this work. So now you know a little bit more about the initiative, you know a little bit more about our strategic plan, and I would like to give the floor to the Deloitte team to explain you what we have done together and what they did for us.
Right now, let's know a little bit more about the context. So we wanted, before deep diving into our project with 4 per meal, we wanted to share some words about the context and why we saw that Deloitte was relevant to work on this and support the work with 4 per meal. So today, what we see more and more is organizations developing decarbonization strategy and targets, but that's the rather easy part of the story, in fact, because the struggle comes when organizations need to roll out this strategy and do it at scale. And the question that they often ask is how to measure, how to monitor, verify, and report on the environmental impact of low carbon practices anywhere and over a long time frame, because the impact are on the long term. And so to do so, organizations need to equip themselves with MRV tool. And then the challenge is to select the right tool depending on their context and their expectation with this tool. And that selection relies on identifying the relevant questions and characteristics to make the best decision and the best selection. And so this is what we see in the market right now. And that was the reason why we thought that helping or supporting this decision process was something we could do. And maybe if we move to the next slide, maybe a bit of context also on the MRV and why tooling is critical. In most cases, what we see in the market at least is that the goal of using MRV is to accelerate and scale up the adoption of agroecological practices. That is relevant to meeting specific organization commitment. We see right before that organizations are committing, and to meet those commitments, they need tools and they need to make sure that agroecological practices are deployed at scale. So they require 3 actions that are enabled by MRV. First one is to quantify the environmental impacts of the practices. The other one is about tracking progress, making sure that the deployment goes as per the plan. And the last one that we usually see is being able to support farmer transition in this deployment and supporting them also financially. I mean, be able to objectify and manage the financial incentive and the technical support of the adoption with farmers. And those are the three main reasons, yes, for tooling with an MRV. That is the one we see right now with our with the organization we work with. And so, yeah, so maybe just one word about the tool itself. I mean, the inventory itself is, we just wanted to make super clear what, I mean, as we mentioned before, so we have been commissioned by 4p1000, and we just want to make super clear what it is and what is not. And so this tool is a way to, as I mentioned before, is a way to simplify decision making by identifying the criteria that help differentiate one from another. And so by characterizing each tool according to these criteria, so it's help making the right decision. It's, you will see afterward, but it's a collection of information that has been shared by the vendors, by the people behind the tool. We have not verified neither Deloitte nor 4p1000 this information, and that is done on purpose. We wanted for the developer to be able to push their information directly. It is for us just a preliminary step, an initial building block to a larger process in the decarbonization strategy. It's not the end game at all. And as we will explain also afterward, it is available to all. It will via a link that you will see on the 4p1000 website. And so, so that is what the inventory is. It's what is not. It's not a comparison of MRV tool. It's not a recommendation to use one tool rather the other, but it always depends on the expectation, on the context. So we cannot make such a recommendation, and we didn't want to make it. And it's a guide to determine the relevance of using MRV solution for each organization to then evaluate independently. So just to make super clear, the fact that this inventory doesn't bring any recommendation, any direction from neither 4p1000 nor Deloitte.
And so regarding the methodology that have been followed to start building this inventory, what we wanted to explain is that it was built in 4 steps. So the first step was to agree on the definition of what is an MRV tool and what salient features should be considered during the characterization of each MRV tool. And for that, various interviews with experts and scientists were carried out with contacts such as INRAE, University of Aberdeen, CESBio, etc. Second step was to carry out a state-of-the-art on already existing tools. The idea was to ensure that we integrate the ongoing projects on MRV tool, such as, for example, the MRV project, the global soil partnerships, and others, and to make sure that we are not redoing what already exists, and to ensure the uniqueness of the work presented today. The proposed inventory of MRV tools can be seen, and we want it to be that this way, can be seen as complementary to other projects that are currently ongoing. And so it's during these first 2 steps that we started to identify some MRV tools through, for example, bibliographic work, complementary internet search, so suggestions that were made by the people we interviewed, and of course, our knowledge of the ecosystem. The third step was to conduct interviews to complete this grid of criteria for characterizing MRV tools. And to this end, we had exchanges and discussions with market players of various sizes and operating in different geographical areas. And the objective was to consolidate the criteria grid in order to characterize the MRV tools. And what is important to understand is that this was quite an iterative step, leading to the refinement of the criteria grid and contributing to collecting data in order to characterize each MRV tool. And the final step was to collect as much as information we could, or at least we had in the inventory today, we have a little less than 30 tools that are characterized. And the modus operandi we choose was to send them a questionnaire to be filled in directly by the tool providers. And as was precise in the previous slide by my colleague, this is directly information that will filled out by the tool providers in order for them to better describe their functionalities. So the first result of these projects was to agree on the definition of what is an MRV tool. The need of defining what is an MRV tool comes with the inflation of the use that we have been observing the last months and years. There is a sort of claimer that can lead sometimes to confusion to understand what is behind an MRV tool. So what we wanted to choose is a definition that provides a clear and easy way to understand what is behind an MRV tool, because sometimes what we can see from actors that we have been interacting with is that they have this effect of a black box, that they provide data as an input and then they have a result of, for example, a quantification of carbon stored in soils. So the idea was to rely mainly on the definition that has been consolidated by the ORCASA project. The main advantage of this definition is that it's complete, precise, but also encourage awareness and understanding what is behind the MRV tool. And so to deep a little bit too deep in the definition, what is important to have in mind is that it's organized around 3 main blocks. So the first block is the monitoring step, which is the process of quantifying a project's impact on climate change mitigation. And we can see that the monitoring pillar, it's relying on one hand, data preparation, which include experiments, direct soil measurement, activity data, and spatial data layers, and the data analysis, which is obtained following the use of different kind of models. And the gear that you can see on the monitoring pillar really highlight the fact that what we are looking at this stage with MRV tools is to have a scalable quantification platform. The second pillar is the reporting pillar, which allows to report results and data to the parties involved in the project. And so the step relies on rules and procedures defined by the MRV tools and how it's reported. And then the last pillar is regarding the verification step. And so the idea here is to verify the veracity and accuracy of the results. So this step relies on verification rules and procedures, a verification phase that can go through the verification that practice have been adopted, for example, through Earth observation, or to use directly soil measurement again to have this verification phase and to feed in the verification purpose. And what we can see at the bottom of the slide is also that Earth observation can be used to feed spatial data layers or activity data with the objective of assessing the variation of soil organic carbon in soils. This can be used with other technologies such as satellite sensors, IA, or other technologies in order to interpret the data that is given by Earth observation. And what we also wanted to highlight is that an MRV tool is not an isolated element, but it's a whole process. And so because understanding what is behind an MRV tool can be quite technical, we wanted to select some questions that the user should ask himself in order to determine what could be the best MRV tools in order to meet its needs. So what we have done is to develop a characterization grid with 48 criteria in order to have enough data to answer the questions that you are currently seeing on the slide. Again, the aim of this inventory is to contribute in clarifying what each tool does and does not, and to assist in making an informed selection of the tool based on what is the user needs. So the 10 questions we have selected and that we think should be addressed in order to pick the most appropriate tool are the one that are here. The first one is regarding, and is a set of questions that might seem evident, but actually there are very few tools, I might say even no tools, that are calibrated and can be used across all geographies, and they can be used to monitor development of agroecological practices for all types of agricultural commodities. So the first two questions are, for which geography the MRV tool is calibrated for, and for which agricultural commodities or practices is the tool adapted to. The second set of questions concern the monitoring pillar. So the focus is on the nature of the input data required for the quantification stage, and actually raise a question of whether the user is in capacity of providing the necessary input data, and also the level of complexity that the MRV tool will be able to deliver as an output. And so the question is, what are the data inputs required by the tool, and also what is the precision of the data output by the tool, and criteria and the data that have been consolidated in the inventory. It's what type of data inputs the MRV tool required, and also what is the IPCC tier associated with the main outcome. The third set of questions around the reporting pillar really focuses on what kind of output indicators the MRV tool is proposing. So, for example, does it directly calculate the carbon in the soil? If this question arises, also because some tools provide rather indicators of soil health, such as, for example, organic matter content, rather than, for example, how much carbon is sequestered in soils. And those indicators can be used for different contexts. It is very important to understand that. Other question is, for example, does the tool have a function that allows scenarios to be simulated regarding the implementation of agroecological practices by the farmer? And this is very important to have this in mind, because very often it facilitates the development of an action plan. And also the last question would be, can the tool be used to meet the requirement of certain carbon certification standards? Because that could be the end need of the user. The fourth set of questions focuses on verification. So is verification based on only satellite data or to be interpreted, or does it require soil sampling? And of course, behind the idea is to assess the effort that will be required in order to go through the whole verification process. And finally, the last set of questions will be relating the cost. Is the tool free? It can be used at the large scale level, and also more practical criteria, such as, for example, is the tool allowing to have interoperability with other database or application, and that can be very important to consider when regarding the data collection phase. And so here are the full scope of criteria that you will find in the inventory that we have built. So it means that all the criteria have been filled for the little less 30 MRV tools that we have collected information on. Maybe some quite comments on those criteria. On the general information, I think that doesn't need to be commented. It's quite self-explanatory. It's just in order to understand when the tool has been created, who are the main users, a short description of what the tool does, the scope. As we have said before, it's very important to specify what is the geographical scale. Is it calibrated at the continent level? Is it calibrated at the country level? For which sector? Then we have all the data related to the monitoring and the data input required. So for example, as the tool being calibrated through experiments, meaning, for example, as if a soil database, as for example, soil monitoring network have been used in order to calibrate the tool. Is it a need for example, to use direct soil measurement as an input, or does it require activity data that is obtained through either declarative data by the user, either external database, either Earth observation? Does the tool relies on spatial data layers? Then on the monitoring pillar, again, we have everything related to the processing of data. For example, which kinds of modeling is being used for each of the MRV tools? Is it a process-based modelization, data-driven modelization? What are the calculation methodology used? Is it from IPCC? Is it from carbon credit standard? And of course, a short description of where does the methodology comes from, transparency, if it's transparent, and also what is the IPCC tier associated with the output data. Then on the reporting pillar, we have the lag time, meaning do I have the result in real time or in 1 month? Then what are the main indicators that we can obtain as an output of the MRV tool? Is it directly ton CO2 of emission reductions? Is it only ton CO2 stored? Is it other indicators that can be used? They can be useful depending on the need of the user and the context of utilization. Is the uncertainty associated with measurement, is it highlighted? Do the MRV tool provide also on-field advisory? And if there is a relationship with some carbon credit methodology or standards, if there is a relation, what is the name of the methodology used, and what is the experience with the carbon credit standard? And then we have the verification pillar, where we have description of all the verification rules and procedure, how the adoption of practice is verified. Is it through Earth observation or other means? And if direct soil measurement is required in order to go through the verification phase. And then we have the business model of the tool. Again, the criteria, I think, are quite self-explanatory. And then we have all the more practical criteria related to the interoperability of the MRV tool with other systems, and how easy is the tool to be used for an external user. And then I'll pass the floor to my colleague, which will make a in-live demonstration of the inventory, which again, I am highlighting, will be a free source of access and content for everyone to download and to have access to this information in order to make the most information and to pick the best MRV tool according to the needs of each user.
Yeah, so hello. I'm now going to demonstrate how the inventory works, because as you now understand what methodology we used and what criteria we selected, I think you all want to see how the tool actually works. So it's an Excel-based tool where we have 4 different tabs, and I'll present each one and explain how each of them work. The first one being the general information, where you have a small text about the purpose of the tool, so basically what we explained today, and then a user's guide in case you forget what I will show you today. And then we have a little text on how to update the tool, which I'll talk about right after the presentation. Then we'll go in the main tab, which is the research center, where you can actually select the criteria that Gabriela mentioned earlier. So we have 2 different ways to research criteria. The first one, and the one that we recommend to use, is the main research center. This one has all the criteria that answer the key questions that we advise you to address when selecting the most suitable tool for a specific context. So the 14 criteria that Gabriela presented earlier. And as you'll have the research center appearing, you first have all the criteria that are selected. You have the possibility to clear them all if you want to, and then select exactly the ones that you want. But I would advise you to keep them all selected. So by clicking on this green button, because if you unselect everything, you will have a shorter list of available tools. And then, for example, if the tool that you're looking for, you want it to be used in Europe only, you will unselect this criteria list here, and then select only Europe-based tools. And then you can go through all these criteria depending on your needs and just select whatever you want. So we'll just try something out today. So for example, I select Europe here. I want a tool, let's say, that is adapted to arable crops and livestock. So I'll select this. I want a data output that is only tier 2 or tier 3. I do want a tool that calculates the amount of carbon stored in the soil. So I'll select yes. And then you can go on and go on. I'll stop there now. And then you can just load the data. And you have to give it a few seconds. It will give you here the restricted list of tools that match the criteria that you selected earlier. So for example, here, if we go in the criteria geographical scale, you'll see that the countries that are here are only European-based countries. If we go in the IPPC tier, you'll see that we only have tier 2 and tier 3 data. And as Gabriela mentioned, we have 48 different criteria, and you can find all of them here. So even if you selected only a few ones, you'll have the results for the rest of the criteria. Here, you only have the very simple results, but if you go in the database, you'll get the more detailed results. So for example, for each of the criteria, in the monitoring, for example, if you select a tool that requires experiments, you'll have additional descriptions next to it, so you can understand a bit more how the tool actually works. The only difference between the two tabs is that here you have the curated list of tools directly, whereas in the database you just have the whole list of every tools that we have. So you need to double check which names appear here and then go and find them directly in the database. So that is for the first research center, the one that we recommend, but we know that we're going to have users that have a better idea of exactly what tools they want. So they might have more research criteria. And in that case, we have created a second research center that looks at 29 different criteria. We have separated them into the categories that were presented earlier. So with the general, the scope, monitoring, reporting, verification, and other. And it works exactly the same way as earlier. You just go wherever you have the criteria that interest you. You unselect all the other criteria, and then you select the one that interests you. Lag time, for example, if you want instant results, you select like this, and then you load the data, and you'll have, after a few seconds, the new list of tools. And so, as I mentioned earlier, this is the third tab, so the one where you have all the information. You might not have everything that you're looking for in there, so don't hesitate to contact directly the tools if you want more information. You have their websites here. And there's one last point I want to underline in the research center is that sometimes you might do research that are not going to give you any results. For example, here, if you want a tool in Asia that works only on agroforestry, only tier 3, and that is free. And then you load the data, it might not work. That means that we don't have any tools that do have those criteria. That doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, because we only have a database with 27 tools today, but we wanted to expand. So if you want to add your information, don't hesitate to reach out. But it might either mean that we don't have this tool on our database, or it might also mean that this tool does not exist. And last but not least, we have a tab with a few definitions, because we know that some of the criteria are very specific, and you might not understand exactly what we mean by this criteria. So we have a small tab that gives you a few definitions on the criteria that we think are most important and that might not be understood quite easily. And now I will go back to the presentation to touch on that point of governance that I mentioned a bit at the beginning of the demo. We wanted to explain and to show you how we're going to update the tool, because we know that a lot of tools are being developed at the moment, and even the tools that we have already in our database are developing. So we want to make sure that all the information that we have there is up to date. So we have 3 different ways to update our database. The first one is that if new tools want to be added to our database, they can download on the website the empty grid, fill it in, and then send it to the 4p1000 initiative. And after 3 or 4 months, we'll do a review of all the new grids that have been sent out, and they will be added to the database. If you're a tool that is already referenced, but you want to change some of the criteria because you've done updates on your tool, you can download the existing database. You can copy paste your line in the new empty grid, change the criteria that you want to change, and then send it back to the 4p1000 initiative. And in the same way, we'll be updating it every 3 to 4 months. And then the last case is if you want to remove your tool because it's not in use anymore, or you just don't want it to be on the database anymore, you can contact the 4p1000 initiative directly, and we'll remove that line from our database. And lastly, we wanted to thank everyone who participated in this project, because we've had the chance to interview a lot of different people that were happy to share their knowledge. It was always very exciting and interesting exchanges. So we wanted to thank all the people that we interviewed, all the tool providers that provided information for our database, because it makes information accessible to all, and we think that it's very important. We also wanted to thank the 4p1000 initiative for the opportunity to develop this inventory and to do this work. To all the Deloitte Sustainability France team that worked on this project for their work, and to the Deloitte Foundation because they funded that project, and to every other contributors that participated in this project. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Aliette, for your great presentation, and Marine and Gabriela. So we are really on time, even a few minutes in advance. So maybe we can now open the floor. Stop sharing, maybe, Aliette, and open the floor to the Q&A. So I have a list of 6 for the moment. And so I will read them, and we will see how we can answer. Ms. Emmeline Brule, I didn't see any reference to the work of NGOs working on evaluation agroecology process and impacts in your state of the art. So did you consider the work of organizations such as Biovision, GTAA, CARI, or Umundi in your review? What about TAPE, the FAO tool? So I know that Gabriela is already typing some answers, but maybe you can give a reply.
Yes. So regarding the state of the art, thank you for suggesting some references. Just to clarify his objective, the objective was to agree on the definition of an MRV. And I am not sure if when you say evaluating agroecological process impacts, you are referring to an MRV tool. We found that our CASA definition was clear enough in order to define and to develop the characterization grid. So that was really the main objective, is to have a very clear definition, and we might look at the reference you are suggesting, but as a state of the art was with a very specific objective that was to have a clear definition of an MRV tool. And regarding the TAPE of the FAO tool, there are already FAO tools that are included. Regarding TAPE, I know that there was some discussion to include at some point, but there were not enough time to collect information regarding that. I don't know if you can put the word anything.
Yeah, we haven't included them all because I mean we did a first benchmark of the tools. We didn't find every tools, but that's why we have this governance part that allows us to add tools every time, because we know that we haven't been exhaustive in our research. So feel free to send us an email with the information, and we can add every other tool to the inventory.
Maybe to keep answering to the questions that are in the question and answer chat. So regarding the use of farmer survey as a proof of adoption practice and why is it not used? So I cannot answer on the behalf of the old MRV tool, but I might think that relying only on declarative data might not be considered enough in case there is financial compensation claimed in exchange for adoption of practices. Keep in mind that the main objectives followed by these actors is to have a scalable quantification platform. So there might be a solution of having declarative information coupled with other types of verification, which could be soil measurement, which could be Earth observation. But yes, I think that the answer might lie there. And regarding, for example, how to distinguish zero tillage and minimum tillage, it's yes, I understand that it's quite difficult, and it's a technical challenge that some MRV tool might be able to address, and some not, depending on what are the technology that are mobilized to do the verification process. And maybe to keep answering to the question regarding, for example, on the fact that few companies claim that they have IPs if they do not share it publicly. How can we democratize this? Well, I think that this inventory is contributing to the democratization of this information. And as we have said in the introduction, too often we realize that the actors are behind the effect of a black box, and this is what we are trying to entangle. So don't have the perfect answer at the moment, but we are clearly advocating towards more public information regarding those tools.
We have a question of also Miss Douanel, Cécile Douanel. Do you reference if the tool or part of the KPI dealt by the tool is acknowledged by some labels or standards like SBTI?
Yes, we do in the calculation methodologies. Maybe I can share in 1 second again my screen so I can show you where it's referenced. So if you go in the database or here in the research center, and if you go to the modeling parts, we talk about the different calculation methodologies that are used. So here, for example, you have the IPPC If
Sorry, Ariette, can you make your screen a bit bigger so we can see a bit more the details of it? Thank you.
can you see it better now?
Yes, perfect.
So here in the calculation methodology, that's where we acknowledge the different methodologies like SBTI, GHG protocol, ISO, IPPC, label bas carbone. So we have all this information here.
We have another question from Nicholas. With the new EU laws, soil health and carbon removal certification framework, CRCF, how those tools were assessed to comply with those laws and with actual protocols like VERA, VM 0042, GHH protocol, LSR, ISCC, Reg Ag, regenerative agriculture.
So I think this is a very interesting question. If my last information are correct, the last version of the text was adopted very recently, 2 weeks ago. And as was said in the introduction, this is a work that started a year ago. So we did not consider at the point this European text and framework, but of course it's very important, and there is no doubt that it will be a key cornerstone in assessing the quality of MRV tools regarding carbon soils. And regarding other standards, as we have said in previous slide, when they can contribute to some carbon credit standards, it is specified, and of course also the name of the methodology.
Another question from the audience. Looks like interview was very informative, and is the interview data available for public?
So it depends on which type of interview. The first part with the experts, it's not available to public because it was really discussions to understand the different definitions, to understand really what the concept of MRV is, and also to define this first criteria grid. So it's technically available to you because it's how we process those information and transcribe them into a tool. But there are no reports that explain exactly what was said during the interview. And for the second part of the interview with the tools, the information that you can find in the database are exactly what we talked about during the interviews. It was really about going through each criteria and filling in the grid, so you technically have the interview data in there.
Okay, thank you. Another one, there is an important case for analyzing climate, nature, and livelihood impacts together, so as to be able to understand synergies and trade-offs in climate mitigation projects. Do you have any thoughts on best approaches to consider biodiversity and/or livelihood impacts in parallel to changes in the carbon balance? What about building more comprehensive MRV tools? Maybe Paul, you can react on this one.
No, sure. This is a need for the future, definitely. There is more and more call for the convention on biodiversity, on desertification, and on climate change to come back to a global assessment and a global tool. I'm not sure at the moment it will be possible to do so, but there's more and more tools that have developed some extension that go in the complementary direction. So maybe in the few months or year, there will be such a more comprehensive tool. And we agree that we've been through a specific, I would say, consideration for this work. But of course, the idea was to have this tool available as soon as possible. It's not exhaustive, as it was said. At the moment, it's open. It means that any kind of people that propose tools will be able to complete if they are already in, or propose a new tool for the inventory. Of course, if we need to make this tool evolve in the future because another category of tools are coming, then maybe we will be able to do so. But so far, we are not the one who proposed the tool, so we are just making the inventory with the help of Deloitte. That's all I can say at the moment on that. Maybe, Gabriela, you want to complete my answer?
I think that we have to have a tool for an objective, and MRV tool here have a very quantification objective. And so I'm not sure that biodiversity or livelihood are very good elements to be quantified. And maybe it's a need to have broader indicators that only looking at the changes in carbon balance. And this is what I think it's actually trying, what international frameworks are trying to highlight, such as EVTN or more comprehensive assessment framework, where the idea is to go see not only what the soil can be able to store, but also what will be the impact in terms of biodiversity, and what will be the impact, for example, in terms of livelihood and resilience for the farm, because the idea is not to decorrelate the carbon that can be stored in the soil, but to reintegrate that in a broader sustainability challenge. And so MRV tools are great. They can help to have a better analysis of how carbon changes are changing in soils, but they cannot be the only answer for transition of the agricultural sector.
Thank you. Last questions is in the selection of criteria, you include IPCC tier, which is great, but you don't ask a preliminary, much more important questions, which is whether the tool is solely relying on IPCC 2019 or whether it is relying on previous outdated IPCC guidelines, for example, 2006. It is much more critical to know this, IPCC 2006 versus IPCC 2019, before you know whether the tool uses a given IPCC tier for a subset of what they do. Am I right in my understanding, or did I miss anything?
I think it's a very interesting question. And so regarding what is the types of data that were used, it was specified in the comments if what they use is IPCC 2006 or 2019, and Juan is correct to highlight that it's a very important criteria also to take into consideration, but it was not a preliminary question since not all the actors rely on IPCC, so it was not considered as, do you use IPCC 2009, and then what is the tier associated? It's more a general question of what is the calculation methodology, and then some actors provided very detailed answers on what is the source used for each of the equations that are used in the modelization pillar. So the information is in the inventory, but not directly associated to the IPCC tier, or at least at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Gabriela. Is there any other questions in the audience? You can write them in the Q&A. Let us know. We have 5 minutes left.
So there are some comments and questions about the sharing of the presentation. We will share the record. The presentation I would say, are part of the record, so you will be able to find the whole lot on our web YouTube channel in the coming days.
And on Friday, you should have access to this tool, the empty grid and the completed grid on the 4p1000 websites.
Yes.
Okay. So to conclude this webinar, I would like to really thank you all the participants online, all the speakers. And I would say on behalf of 4p1000 that we are really thankful to Deloitte France for the huge work that was conducted and for the results by the team, and for the results that you have seen today and that will be available on the website, on the 4p1000 website, just as Paul said. 4p1000 is also very grateful to Deloitte Foundation, who funded this study through the sustainable team present here. And the tool which emerged from the study is a very interesting one, and is a very good beginning. Because, and the last word I wanted to say that we think at the 4p1000 that it was a bit like our first thematical conference. So first in Montpellier and now online with the more international community. And we think that at 4p1000 it's that we have this mandate or role or mission of providing overviews and insights such as this tool, and for on-the-ground implementation, and especially also for farmers. So, and that will be my last word. And again, thank you for being there today. We were quite numerous, so it's a good sign. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Operation.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.